It's about how many coaches, how many organizations can we now affect in a positive way. And I would say, secondly, it's hopefully going to become even more global. The goal is to continue to build up basketball around the world, to connect the dots, to have American players come over to, or at least be exposed to the international side of things, and have international side players be exposed to the American side of things, and really just bring people together through basketball, give people opportunities through basketball. But at the core of it, man, it's still about continuing to innovate for this game and for the profession, and sharing that innovation with as many people, quality people, as possible.
You are listening to the Beyond the Scoreboard podcast, transforming athletes into leaders on and off the court with host Coach Furtado. Coaches, are you ready to take your passion for coaching and turn it into a full-time career? I know the challenges firsthand, but the Make Money Coaching Sports program helped me take BTG basketball full-time. If you're tired of juggling coaching part-time and want to fully focus on doing what you love, this business accelerator will give you the tools and support to make it happen. Hit the link in the show notes below to learn more and start living your dream. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Beyond the Scoreboard podcast, transforming lives through sport. Today, we're talking with a true innovator of the global game, Coleman Ayers, founder of By Any Means Basketball. So, By Any Means Basketball the goal is to innovate the game globally. Cole started out as an ungifted athlete, quotes, but earned every bit of success. He chose to build a life's calling, helping others become better players and, more importantly, better humans. Today, Cole leads a team of 10 with 5 locations, impacting 200-plus youth athletes and 20-plus college/pro players in Miami and from over 20 countries. He's authored the #1 Amazon bestseller, Deep Skill, forged strategic partnerships with the NBA and EuroLeague, and runs revolutionary player development conferences. Cole is not just a coach, he's a visionary, transforming the youth basketball and the basketball landscape and impacting people worldwide. Get ready to learn. Let's welcome the founder of By Any Means Basketball, Coleman Ayers. Welcome to the show, Cole.
Thank you, man. That's a hell of an introduction right there, man. So I appreciate it.
Of course. Had to have a little bit of help writing it, and this is my first time reading off a teleprompter, so I apologize maybe for some of the lack of coherency, but really excited for our conversation. Obviously, we've got the opportunity to work together quite a bit over the last couple of months as Cole is helping expand BTG basketball here in Los Angeles. And so obviously we could talk about where you are with By Any Means, a lot of your travels, and we'll get to that. I think one of the things is for the listeners is just to understand where you are coming from. So like, why did you choose the game of basketball, and how did the game of basketball really impact your life when you were in high school and even younger?
Yeah, that's a great question, bro. So I would say for me, like, it was really no other option where I come from. At least I'm from the DMV area, so Washington, D.C. metro area, and everyone plays basketball there. It's just kind of assumed that at least you're going to give it a shot. I've sampled a bunch of sports growing up as well, which is I think something that is missing in today's landscape, and I'm sure we'll talk about it at some point. But sampled a ton of sports, and I think basketball is just the one that, for me, has always been able to reflect life. And not that I was sitting there thinking about that as a kid, but I think there's always something that drew me to it about being more than just the game, right? And the adrenaline that comes with it, the different people that you meet, the challenges that you face in terms of just how it can be, as you refer to, a slightly less athletic player having to kind of scrap your way through it. To me, it always just kind of reflected or taught me certain things and gave me certain qualities that I would say were intriguing, and stuck with it. Became my only sport I don't want to say pretty early, but going into high school, and throughout that entire process, I would say it really just lent me a good perspective on failure. Failed a lot, got cut from teams, made some really good teams, was eventually on the #2 team in the entire country. So was able to experience that, but also with a lot of failure and negatives. And I would say, more than anything, it's just taught me how to deal with the ups and downs of life, how to stay disciplined, how to be professional, and then also just how to mesh with people, right? Everyone who's played basketball knows you'll be playing with, an old 50-year-old lawyer and then, an 18-year-old kid from across the city at the same time. And basketball is just super cool in that way and has always, I guess, helped me and many others become a chameleon as well. And that's one thing I'm super appreciative of about the game.
Absolutely. And so, I want to follow up with you on all those life lessons you talked about, like being able to connect with that 18-year-old from across the city and that 50-year-old lawyer. But before we get to that, I'm just curious, like when you were in high school, did you have, and I know you started by any means basketball in high school, what was your vision for it? Is it the vision that you are living now, or has it changed and evolved over years?
That is also a fantastic question, and I would love to sit here and say that I had everything planned out from the beginning and that it, went perfectly according to my plan. But in reality, I was taking it day by day, and everything was just about continuing to innovate the way that I see the game. Not even necessarily the way that everyone else sees the game, but continuing to innovate the way that I see the game. And selfishly, at first, it was more so just about how I can get myself better, how I can work through, genetic barriers of not being a super athletic guy and improve the mentality, the physicality, the skill side of things, the IQ. And eventually it just kind of, I fell in love with that entire process of researching, experimenting, seeing results, not only with myself but with others. And the vision back then was just literally to learn as much as possible and to spread all of that knowledge as much as possible. And hopefully that's been done over the years. But all the other stuff, the extra, cool travel and the players that we've been able to work with in the gym and everything past just learning and experimenting was not a part of the vision, and it's been a blessing, but has kind of come little by little. And I think I can attribute that to making the core of my mission, just continuing to learn and share information to people.
No, I love that. And it's a principal value that's going to stay with you. So instead of having this like long vision, so to speak, when you were younger, you stuck to a core philosophy that's helped get you to where you are now. And so thinking about where you are now, what is one piece of advice you would give? And I'm sure I know you're doing it with by any means coaches where you're being able to share that and we'll get to that, be able to share that at a certain point. But what advice would you give that your younger self when you are just starting out as, a trainer? And then also my two-part question would be, why did you choose to start becoming a trainer at a younger age versus pursue, playing collegiate basketball and playing overseas?
Yeah, so I'm going to flip those and answer the second one first because I think it'll give some
Cool.
context. I chose becoming a trainer, a coach over playing because there was a fork in the road where I literally had a couple days to make the decision, right? I could either play Division III basketball or I could go to a regular school on a full scholarship and just follow kind of the passion of training and almost restart a life in a sense. Basketball is all I knew. Playing basketball was all I knew.
Right.
There was a gut feeling there that there's much more potential for impact across the world as a coach, as a trainer, right? And looking long term like that is something that's very tough to do as a young athlete, really. Like I wouldn't even consider myself a coach then. It was more like still getting into that side of things. And I don't know necessarily how I made the decision. Again, I'm not going to sit here and act like, yeah, I saw 20 years down the line I was going to
Right.
be this, that, and third. Like, no, it was a gut feeling, right? And I think one piece of advice I would give to younger people, or maybe my younger self in this position, but younger people who are in that similar position where you don't really know where to go with it, is most times your desire to continue to play is honestly just out of a selfish ego type place. You want to continue to play because you've told people you're going to make the NBA, and because you've told yourself you got to get there or else you're not man enough, right? And even though there are probably other things that are pulling you in that direction, other passions that you have, you're probably sticking to that because of an ego thing. And it may take a little while to realize that, but that's something that I realized. And, I'll still get the itch to play. I've been offered, opportunities to go play, not anywhere crazy professionally, but like low level professional leagues. And I've almost done it. And I've realized that is an ego. That's the ego speaking, because I know that I care more about this and that I care more about making an impact and that I have more potential to do so through that. So if you're a young coach, trainer in a similar position, whether it's continuing to play basketball or anything that you feel like you're just hanging on to, I think people would be surprised at how much impact they can have and how much more passion they would be able to devote towards the coaching and training side of things versus continuing to hold on to something for, again, almost a selfish reason that, will only last for so long. So yeah, that's one small piece of advice I would say.
100%. And that is quite the foresight as a young person to recognize that you can have more impact coaching and teaching and mentoring, right? You started with athletes, and now you're at the point where you're mentoring coaches and helping
Yeah.
coaches develop, because I'm sure obviously you had this realization that, okay, you can only work with so many athletes at a time. Now, the next step if I want to impact more athletes, is I have to train the next generation of coaches, like the BTG coaching staff, your coaching staffs, your academies across the US. Obviously, you go and travel internationally. You have by any means coaches, you have the Deep Skill book. What made you want to make that transition from just impacting and coaching and training athletes to coaching and training coaches? And what's the difference, if there is any?
Yeah, I think the first reason is one that you alluded to, which is if you can have a positive impact on one coach, that could be legit thousands of players through that coaching tree over the next, decade or 2 decades, right? If I help a coach in whatever, US, different country, not only are they going to coach a lot of players, but also those players will become coaches. Those coaches will then coach more players who also become coaches, and you can really create almost like exponential impact through working with coaches. So that was probably the main driving force. And the number two is I just saw how much hunger is out there to learn, but in such a young industry that we are in, how limited the actual resources are to learn as a coach. And I know that because, I went on a 7-8 year journey of trying to learn everything I possibly could. And of course, I'm still on that learning journey. But before I even started working with coaches, it was probably a 5-6 year journey of like not only getting a bunch of experience and as much as possible, but learning from, the science of psychology, getting a degree in strength and conditioning to see the game in a different way, learning about everything you could possibly imagine on the skill acquisition side of things, learning from coaches around the world in terms of X's and O's. And in other industries, you can fast track that. And this one, there are really no possible ways to fast track that because not many people have done it in the past for whatever reason. Maybe it's just because it's a young industry. And of course, there are people who are great at educating coaches, but knowing how difficult it was for myself definitely gave me an incentive to do this for other coaches, especially younger coaches coming up. And maybe they can even surpass me sooner and they can move the industry and the field forward because they have a more efficient way to get there. And then in terms of the difference, I would say a lot of it is players don't need to know exactly, and this is a skill acquisition principle, but players don't need to know exactly why they're doing things, right? Like you see those videos of Steph Curry saying to avoid a thumb flick or whatever, like, don't have your palm on the ball. And then he has his palm on the ball or he does the thumb flick. And it's a pretty obvious disconnect between like players don't really know what they are doing. So it's more so about breeding improvement. Whereas coaches, you want them to be able to think about every little action that they take as a coach, whether that's designing their drills, whether that's the way that they speak to athletes. So it takes a lot more explicit knowledge and clear, concise, I would say, explanations and teaching to be done. But at the same time, coaches are usually hungry for that. And I would say the second difference is that the ego can get involved. Younger coaches usually are a little bit more open, obviously, to everything. But when speaking with coaches who've been doing things for a while, doing basketball for a while, even longer than me, you got to meet them where they're at, right? And there's an art to being able to take all these more modern skill acquisition principles and the way that we see the game at Binding Means, which is obviously through experience and research, but then also meeting people halfway if they've been doing more traditional stuff, more old school stuff for a while. It's like, how can I help them just integrate little by little by little? And you don't really have as much of an ego effect with players. And ego like gets a negative connotation, but I think it's more of just like, when you've been doing something for a while, the urge is to do things in the same way. And it's just a matter of how can we, kind of pull players or pull coaches in a more, research backed, just, I guess, contemporary direction.
100%. And I think that's one of the reasons, obviously, we have aligned in terms of our values is we see the game in a similar way, right? At BTG, we are believers in the constraint-led approach, skill acquisition science, ecological dynamics, a lot of obviously big words and jargon, right? If you've been coaching for a long time, you're like, this is stupid. Like, this just looks cool for Instagram, whatever,
Right.
like I'm just going to do my 3-man weave and my stationary ball handling and da-da-da-da-da. Now, I want to kind of, this is going to be and this conversation probably could be a full podcast series in itself of transforming the American youth basketball, youth sport industry, of travel sports, of any coach can grab a team and go play. And these games really aren't that organized. And the referees are, they're refereeing 10 to 12 games a day. They're getting paid no matter how well they do. There's a shortage of referees anyways. The list goes on. So if you have traveled to multiple different countries, right, you've seen basketball at different countries, and I know you've posted about it recently, about your thoughts on how you would change the culture of basketball in a country. Now let's just focus specifically on America. It's where most of our listeners are. What would your number one priority be to transforming the youth basketball industry to be more representative of contemporary basketball ideology?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it starts in whether this is possible or not. I'm truly not sure because there are probably some barriers to this that may be unbreakable. But to me, there needs to be some sort of centralized governing body. I would assume USA Basketball, which, that would get into the whole legal side, whether the government is going to appoint them as like the primary decision maker. That's for them to take care of. This is all theoretical. If I sound stupid, I sound stupid. But I think America is the only place in the world that does not have a basketball federation. Or they do, but it doesn't control what it should control, right? So there literally are no checks and balances for the quality of tournaments, the quality of referees, the quality of clubs and programs. Clearly, like you said, there are no restrictions on where players can play, how many teams they can play for in a given weekend, how many games they can play, how many tournaments they can play. It's the wild, wild west. And because we are in such a capitalistic society, which, isn't a problem when there are checks and balances on things, people are going to do whatever makes the most money. And you almost can't blame them in a way because that's just what we're born to do a lot of times in America. But there has to be something that stops people from going too far. And right now there is not. So my suggestion in a perfect world would be to have USA Basketball charge teams, club teams each year, monthly fee. Doesn't have to be anything crazy, to raise money or create the revenue pool to be able to appoint people in each region to do quality control checks, to show up to tournaments, to have more standardization. So now we have standings, we have a point system, we have consistency in tournaments. And would this fix all the issues? No. But with a certification that also teaches coaches and organizers how to create a good culture, how to coach players the right way, how to have them playing real basketball, I I think it starts systematically more than anything, because the culture is a lot more difficult to change when it's, I mean, basketball may be the biggest sport here now, and there are so many people playing, coaching, directing, involved in it, that it's tough to attack, like even find a start of where we can really, attack this from. So yeah, I think a lot of it starts from up top in the systems. I think otherwise, like I could sit here and talk about, well, coaches need to be more open to learning, and players need to be more loyal, and tournament directors need to do this, that, and third. But it's just an unrealistic expectation. And I think if we had that centralization and standardization like they do in every other country in the world, it would make things a lot easier to change.
Yeah, people are going to fall in line with the systems that are created, right?
Right.
Now, if there are, Adapt Academy, BTG, there are other organizations that are going to fall in line and do what's right.
Sure.
However, there's going to be all those other, not all those other, but some organizations that take advantage of the loose rules and
A
regulations
lot of them.
that
A
are
lot of
there, right? And yeah, a lot of them, correct. Because pretty much anyone, like we said, can be a basketball coach and work with kids, except, so it doesn't really make sense. And just the rise of the youth sports, it's like a bigger industry than the NFL now. And to how we don't have regulations that's pretty insane to me. Now, with that being said, you have had experience obviously going to other countries. So can you paint that picture? You mentioned like, obviously there's the FIBA Federation. There's other federations, other governing bodies in these other countries. Now, what does that look like for those that haven't been there and seen that?
Yeah, so I would say usually how that looks structurally in other countries, and this is obviously a very umbrella conversation because every country does a little bit differently. Some federations are great, some are absolutely terrible, and I would almost rather not have a federation. Um, but you'll have people at the top who, yeah, they regulate everything from the game weekends, how many games are played over the course of the season. It's literally like having a commissioner for youth sports, or like a
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the exact word for the entire front office of the NBA, so to speak, but it's like having somebody who really regulates everything. Now, the problem here is that a lot of federations are old, outdated people who potentially have no idea about anything basketball related. So in those cases, these federations actually do more harm than good at times, because yeah, they just don't. They're not willing to invest money in coaching. They're not willing to invest money in, I guess they'll build a new facility that's not really needed before they put that same amount of money towards, um, like coach development or things that could, be a lot more fruitful. So if you have the right people in these federations, and there are some that do it well. Australia is one that comes to mind. They have different federations for each state, but um, like it can really change a lot, because as I've seen in certain countries, what the federation does over time will make a big change. So if they're bringing in coaches to do coaches clinics, and these are really quality coaching education people who can, mentor their young coaches. By the way, you have to get a certain amount of like educational credits in most other countries to remain an active coach. So you have to go to coaches clinics. You have to do new coaches certifications that will count as like credits to your continuing education. And if those are quality opportunities, and you build the culture of having like a hunger for education, uh, it can really change the way that people train. So there are some where like the CLA is very highly promoted amongst the federation, and because of that, like I've seen a huge increase in the use of it throughout the entire country. Now, most of the coaches in, again, this is an umbrella phrase, but most of the most coaches outside of the U.S. are volunteers. So there's only so much you can do as a volunteer coach. There's only so much efficacy or like buy-in that you have to being able to make a living out of it. And there's still probably better coaches than most American ones, which kind of shows you like a lot of American coaches make a full-time living off of AAU, and they don't want to get educated. And then you have coaches across the world who will never work with like a pro player. They're not making money, and they're devoting more time and even money educating themselves. And I think a lot of that starts with hopefully good federation. So yeah, it's different. Landscape's different, but again, having that centralization even just something that people can go to and ask questions and have everything as one is big.
100%. And so those are kind of some of the different cultural norms, right? Like here in America, we don't have that norm necessarily in the American basketball industry of constantly learning, right? And part of it, it's because of the market, right? Because like you said, it's capitalistic, right? If a coach is right, if and this is where I'm going to get to by any means and kind of talking about Adapt Academy and how you guys are changing things, because I'm sure you had the realization, oh, we got to change this from the inside out. Like I'm not going to be outside in telling coaches how to change, right? We're going to have to build products, right? AAU programs, training programs that embody these values that then go and beat the competition of the traditional competition, because here in America, right, if you are getting beat, you gotta adapt, right? Exactly like Adapt Academy. So, can you talk about how you are changing basically the youth basketball industry from the inside out with Adapt, with Detail, and all the other things you got going on?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say when we started Adapt Academy early last year, the goal was less so to change the entire landscape, and I'll get to this. Less so to change the entire landscape, more so to give athletes who have been frustrated, or families in general who have been frustrated with the entire landscape, almost like an oasis from the state of youth basketball. We've talked to so many families who would train with us, and obviously we've been doing just training for a while, who are just super frustrated with how everything's going. Coaches super frustrated with it. So our idea was, okay, can we create a place that's almost like the anti-AAU program, anti-AAU club program, because you have to play into it a little bit, of course.
Yes,
Like I said earlier, you got to meet people where they're at.
right.
But we were not too sure, or I would say we didn't really foresee how many other programs would see what we're doing and be inspired by it a little bit. And I think that's where the power for change really comes in, is like sticking to values, allowing other people, like you said, to see it from the outside in, but then they go and fix it from the inside out, and then we build up that number more and more. And will that ever be everyone? No. Will that ever be the majority of people? Probably not. But as long as more and more athletes and families get a place to experience quality basketball and a quality community and a good youth basketball experience, I'm cool with that. Whether it's 0.0001% of the entire population that plays basketball here, or it's 20% because a bunch of clubs start to change, or it's 80%. I don't know. We're going to do what we can control, and what that is one, really harping on coaches' education. So making sure that all of our coaches are consistently learning, not only about just skills training, but how to maximize these athletes and these teams' IQ and their ability to play good quality team adaptable basketball. Community is another big focus. So when people lock in with us, it's a community, it's a family, it's something where people can come in early, they can stay late, they can have a home, even if we don't have necessarily our own gym in all locations like we do here in Miami. It's something where people truly feel like it is a second home or even a first home at times. And I have an athlete back there right now who's sleeping on the couch. I don't know why he's here, but they just come in here and hang out. And I feel like that's something that, at least when I was growing up, I never felt like I was going to practice to be with a community, but I was just going to practice to practice, right? And then also just challenging the athletes to play the right way, focusing on development more than anything. We don't play any more than 2 tournaments a month. It would never be on my mind to play any less than that, because I do think games are important, but we try to make sure they're as quality as possible. So we started a league here. We do Adapt Cups in other locations where it can't be a full league, but we have shot clock, limited zone defense at younger ages, limited press. So really all the things that we've been able to learn from not even just other countries and how they're developing athletes, but just good people even around the U.S., we're trying to implement in a club program where athletes can come in, get everything they need from a development standpoint, from learning how to play, from having supportive educated coaches, and even in terms of the families and the parents, making them feel at home and welcome, and like it's a second community for them as well. And again, like I said, hopefully this will inspire more people as we continue to go on for a decade or multiple decades. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I know we're going to take care of the athletes and the families that we have in the program currently.
100%. And so I would love to share some of the challenges that you all have experienced in, and this can be even from like, finding the gym in Miami. Just what are some of those challenges to building an organization like this? Because,
Yeah.
obviously there comes limited gym time, right? You have to convince parents to come to other additional trainings. How did you kind of, I guess, a little bit of the step-by-step process on how you built this out on, the 365-foot view? And I know you do some consulting that, those that are listening can maybe reach out to you about after.
Yes, sir. So I would say number one are all the kind of niche cultural things that perceptions have to be changed about. Even like with our league, we've had teams that have dropped out, and this is almost verbatim, because we are too organized and because we hold too high standards. And I never saw that coming, but it makes sense because when parents come in here and they start yelling at their kids or the other team, we tell them to stop. When coaches start acting a fool, we tell them to stop. When referees are not holding up their end of the bargain, we tell them to be better. And people don't like that because there are no standards upheld anywhere else at these tournaments, at these, with these clubs. And we've actually seen a decrease in our league participation and in our tournaments because people will not return because, again, we've gotten mad at them when they have to cancel their game an hour before the game and we don't give them a refund. And people don't like that. They enjoy, in this whole youth sports industry, they enjoy being disorganized because they don't have to hold themselves to a high standard and they don't have to act professionally. And that's tough. That's a legit limitation, not only on like if you're running leagues and tournaments, trying to do that differently, but also as a club, when parents come in and they are acting in ways that we don't want them to act and we tell them to stop in a nice, respectful, private way, they don't like that. And one thing that you have to realize is that this is, at least initially, a sacrifice that you have to make financially. You will have to leave money on the table by cutting people loose, by not taking teams into the tournament, by investing. I would say this is obviously will increase your expenses, but investing in coaches' education, like you guys do, right? Like there are a lot of things, or investing in community events. Like you will make less money doing this, at least in the short term. Short term. Will this turn into more money in the long term? I don't know. My main priority is not that, but rather making an impact and showing people that you can do things a little bit closer to what I would consider to be, or we would consider to be, the right way. But that's probably the biggest struggle, and it's something that will take a while and will probably never change because there are so many clubs and organizations that are doing it in a toxic way. Now, more logistically, I would say gym time is obviously a big one. That's always going to be a struggle, as you know, and we've talked about extensively, because people will be interested in it. People will see how different it is. People are going to hear their family, friends, their teammates raving about it, and they'll want in. But gym time is big here, as well as manpower, and scaling too quickly can become a tough thing to avoid, in the sense of, look, we are going to get more people who are interested. Yes, as I mentioned, we're going to have to cut people loose, and it may take a while, but at some point, people are going to start kind of flooding in the door. Do you dilute the product by accepting everyone and doing so in a fast way? Or do you hold off a little bit, wait until your coaches are educated, wait until you have sufficient gym time to actually deliver a good product? And if they never come back, knowing and being at peace with the fact that you left money on the table. I'm okay with that. All of our adapt locations are okay with that, and that's like one of the first things that we make sure is we're aligned on, and that'll probably return to us in the future. More than anything, we want to make sure that our image, but our product and the results that we deliver to these athletes and these families on and off the court is a priority. So not diluting the product is definitely one that is difficult, and obviously that comes with a bunch of different logistical constraints. And I would say the last one is I don't think this is a difficulty, but building a community is a process and one that's fun, but can also, of course, come with its logistical constraints. And it's something where we host as many events off the court as we can. We host like different seminars. Here in Miami, it's easy for us to have like beach days. We'll do a beach workout, but then bring all the families in, and they'll kind of hang out on the beach. And that takes some time to get traction. Like at first, nobody was coming to them because it's just not normal for a program to be doing things like that. Now they're packed out. You guys also had a great one. I know 100 plus people at a restaurant basically shut it down. And you can see how, like, again, once that gains traction, it can be huge. So yeah, the list could go on and on here. I don't want to, ramble on about this all day, but definitely comes with its fair share of struggles, but also sacrifices that have to be made.
And it's mission driven at the end of the day, right? It's not right because I think when I was like figuring out before basketball, there's like I can't remember. It's like people, profit, planet. That's the triple P, right? So it's not just profit, not just a focus on that. Now, obviously, you have to make money to
Right.
keep your business afloat, right? And so it's not like when you say you leave some money on the table, right? Because you had too high of standards, which is insane. You're too organized. That's funny to me, but I guess not surprising, but
No.
funny. You're not leaving all the money on the table, right? You're still attracting good families. It's just about you don't want to scale so fast where you just like you got to be patient with it.
Right.
Is what I hear, and got to stick and stay true to your core values, which I feel
Yes.
like this is one of the things that I feel like you're a constant evolution, right? In the intro, it's like innovative and continuous learning. And that's how obviously great companies like Apple and Microsoft, they were always evolving and learning. If you always stay the same, right? You won't reach your potential. And I can't remember if it was your video or a transforming basketball video that talked about like adaptability is like one of the most important life skills, like for evolutionary purposes, like as people, as animals, like if you can't adapt with the times, right, it ends up, you die, like technically, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, we're at a point in human evolution where we won't die, but you won't reach your potential. And so that's what's so exciting about it. And, as we kind of reach the 2 minute mark in the fourth quarter of our conversation, where is by any means basketball going? And how do you see what's the vision?
Yeah. So I would say number one, obviously, it starts with continued learning. Like there's still so much to be uncovered and dug up in terms of basketball and everything around it, whether it's obviously the on court skill acquisition, training, X's and O's, etc. But also just everything that goes with it in terms of psychology, in terms of building adaptable people, but also players, but also people. So the mission, the core mission is going to continue to stay the same, which is learn, innovate, adapt, like you just said. And the only way that it's going to continue to shift is a lot of it will be coaches driven. Obviously, we'll continue to work with players, but now that we're getting more bandwidth, it's about how many coaches, how many organizations can we now affect in a positive way. And I would say, secondly, it's hopefully going to become even more global. The goal is to continue to build up basketball around the world, to connect the dots, to have American players come over to, or at least be exposed to the international side of things, and have international players be exposed to the American side of things, and really just bring people together through basketball, give people opportunities through basketball. But at the core of it, man, it's still about continuing to innovate for this game and for the profession, and sharing that innovation with as many people, quality people as possible.
100%. So for the quality people that are listening to this pod, that are like, oh, I'd love to learn a little bit more about what Cole and the Binding Means team does. Can you share? Because I know you have quite a few offerings. You share some of the opportunities that the listeners can reach out to you about, and what the best way is, or how the best way is to reach out to you.
Yeah, for sure. So, like you said, there are a lot of things that we offer, but I would say since most of the listeners here are coaches or are people, uh, you know, past their playing years, definitely if you are interested in the coaches education side of things, we have our coaches academy and certification. Um, so that is more so coaches education based on court X's and O's, skills training, player development, and then we have the business side of things. So helping organizations build their business and do it in the right way, so they can make more money and more of an impact. So yeah, reach out, either go on the website bindingmeansbball.com or probably more specifically bindingmeanscoaches.com for people who are listening to this. Feel free to reach out to me on Instagram. I try to get back to everyone. And yeah, the doors are always open. And before we get out, also wanted to shout out BTG, Justin. We've been working with Justin for feels like a while now, but really, I guess almost half a year.
In February,
February,
yeah, I
right?
think,
Yeah.
yeah, February, yeah.
Yep. So, yeah, I mean, you guys are a clear example of people who are doing it the right way. And Justin, for anyone listening to this, isn't just on here, talking podcast ideas, but is out in the trenches doing it on a daily basis, man. So, shout out to BTG. I'm excited to see the continued growth and hopefully even more programs will be inspired by BTG to do things the right way. And who knows where it'll take us, but doing a great job, man.
All right. Appreciate you dropping wisdom for our listeners today. Obviously, I always appreciate the inside wisdom you're helping with us for the BTG community. Appreciate you, Cole.
Absolutely, man. Thank you, bro.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Beyond the Scoreboard podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and share it with a friend, coach, or parent you feel like would get value from this episode. It's our responsibility to impact as many parents and coaches who are the ones that are impacting our athletes. That's how we create a ripple effect. So thank you for being a part of our community, and we look forward to serving you all next week.